From slamming White for his comments on Ngannou's inactivity in the UFC, to bashing him for saying that the PFL received funding from the Middle East, here's how Ariel Helwani has reacted to Dana White and Francis Ngannou's beef. Let's kick this off with Helwani slamming White for his comments on the Predator, because the MMA journalist is spitting out facts about the whole situation. I mean, the guy's by far the most well-known media figure in the UFC, and when he speaks, people listen. The UFC president shared his piece about the whole Ngannou situation. Again, just to remind you, the two aren't on good terms right now. In a post-event presser following the UFC Vegas 73, Dana said that Francis wasn't an active fighter. That's why he didn't continue fighting for the UFC. Now, obviously, the president said all this to somehow disrespect the former UFC heavyweight champion, but Ariel was having none of it. In an episode of the MMA Hour, Helwani said that Ngannou fought 5 times between 2019 and 2022. That's 5 fights in 3 years, and when the Nigerian didn't fight for 18 months in between, all because he was coming off ACL surgery and was also a free agent. Suddenly, White thinks that he doesn't fight enough inside the octagon. The UFC president also claimed that Francis only fights once a year, to which the Canadian journalist said that it was a bull way of framing all this. Whoa, Helwani's out there taking some serious shots at Dana. He also claimed that the former heavyweight champ doesn't fight enough because he's afraid of taking risks. And guess what? Ariel reacted to these comments as well. The MMA Hour host said that even when Ngannou was released from the UFC, he actually fought the organization out of his contract, all while negotiating a new deal with the UFC, which he eventually declined. He also mentioned that the Predator has put his life on the line multiple times for this organization. He spent time in detention centers, also had to jump off rafts, and even had to live homeless before he could eventually make a name for himself in MMA, Ariel said. Is this the guy who doesn't want to take risks? This has become so ridiculous. Yikes, things were already bad between Helwani and White. And now it seems like they're never going to get better, not anytime soon though. Speaking of their relationship, their beef isn't something recent. Did you know that Dana once banned Helwani from the UFC events? Oh yeah, back in 2016, cracks started to appear in their relationship, and believe it or not, these guys were on good terms once. The bad blood started after the Canadian journalist started covering issues like fighters' pay, and why so many stars departed from the UFC in 2016. This didn't sit well at all with the president. But all hell broke loose when at UFC 200, the organization was working on a cross-promotional deal which would allow the former UFC heavyweight champ Brock Lesnar to make a return at UFC 200. They had this whole event planned for this, and an announcement video too at the end for Brock's return. All this just to surprise and shock the fans to their core. But Helwani had already announced at UFC 199 that Lesnar will return. Oops! They still ran that video, but there wasn't any excitement as the fans already knew that he was coming back. White then threw Ariel out of UFC 199, and according to the MMA journalist, the president called him into his room, pushed him around, and escorted him out of the arena. The Canadian was even banned from the UFC for life. Even though the ban was overturned just 2 days later, they're still on bad terms, and as things are going, they'll remain on bad terms for a long time. Plus, it's not the first time that Dana White has had beef with a fighter that wanted to walk out of the organization. The same thing happened with Randy Couture when he decided to leave the UFC and retire from the sport. Randy felt like the president wasn't giving him enough attention, didn't see his potential as a fighter, and just kept pushing other fighters into the spotlight instead of him. This led Couture to believe that White wasn't a nice guy, and he wasn't going to help him at all, so he decided to retire. But then, White offered him a job as a UFC analyst, which Randy denied because he said the pay was peanuts. He even dissed Dana publicly. White immediately snapped back at Randy and said that he doesn't respect him at all. He even said that the only time that Randy is a man is when he steps inside the octagon. As soon as he steps out of it, he's the farthest thing from it. I mean, we all know that he's a sensitive guy when it comes to the company or the business, but he's too harsh on his fighters sometimes, which isn't a good thing at all. Now we know what Ariel thinks about the UFC president, but what about Francis Ngannou? Does he think about him the same way? The Nigerian is not impressed with White, the 36-year-old recalled in one of his conversations with him. He told the president that he doesn't feel like he belongs in the promotion. It's like he doesn't have a promoter anymore. And Dana's reply was hilarious. He asked Ngannou, "Have you ever wanted to go to an event but didn't get the tickets for it? Or have we ever denied you access to the UFC Performance Institute?" I mean, what the heck is this guy even talking about? Ngannou said it felt like he has worked all his life just to get access to events and the PI, and that's when he decided to make the switch. But that wasn't the only reason. The former heavyweight champ added that he's really happy with the deal he struck with PFL. He even referred to it as the best business decision he's ever made. After recent comments about his inactivity, the Predator took to Twitter and asked Dana, "What is your problem with me?" The Nigerian also said that he fulfilled his contract and he was a free agent after that. He was the one who chose to walk away from the UFC to find better opportunities. Ngannou also stated the reason he only fought 3 times in 3 years was because the UFC wanted to control his deal and force him to sign a new one. What the hell? No wonder Francis is really pissed off. Speaking of the fighter switching over to the PFL, White's comments about the organization have also caught Ariel Helwani's attention. He initially dissed the PFL's business decisions, before stating that he has no beef with the organization. Classic Dana White. He said that the guys over there are very professional. They've never talked smack to him or anyone else, but these are the only good things he said about the promotion. Then he started saying what he really thinks about them. The 53-year-old said that if he doesn't like someone, he'll never hold back or anything, and will let him have it. He said that the PFL's business model doesn't make any sense to him, and added that the promotion is getting a huge investment from the Middle East, about $280 to $300 million. Dana said that he's done business with Middle Eastern people in the past and doesn't know why the heck someone would give an organization like PFL $300 million. He even claimed that the PFL's interested in buying Bellator MMA, despite their own organization being funded $300 million from a foreign country. It's an organization that's burning through cash, has 0 ratings, and is selling 0 tickets too. In the end, he pulled a 180 and wished Ngannou the best of luck for his future in the promotion. After all that, White still says that he has no beef with the promotion. Yeah, right. Now, this didn't sit well with Ariel Helwani. In the same episode of the MMA Hour, the host reacted to these comments as well. He blasted the UFC president for saying that the PFL will receive funding from the Middle East. The journalist was surprised that White would say something like that. He also clarified that the PFL was thinking about purchasing Bellator MMA, but they're no longer the frontrunners to buy the promotion. Plus, Ariel also said how the funding is a sign that they don't know what they're doing, and added that if there's someone out there who's willing to pay him $300 million, it means they must be doing something right. So there you have it. From bashing him for saying that the PFL received funding from the Middle East, to slamming Dana White for his comments on Ngannou's inactivity in the UFC, here's how Ariel Helwani reacted to Dana and the Predator's beef.
He stooped so low, and I could not believe that he would go to that level, that he would talk about my family.